everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fire Up Wisconsin. We are going to start tonight because we are going to observe a moment of silence as today is 9/11, and we want to remember all those that we lost and how everyone was affected on that day. So here's a moment of silence. That was a picture taken of the new One World Trade Center with the memorial last year. Okay. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Smokin' Jeremy B next to me.
Well, good evening, sports fans, and it is Fire Up Wisconsin. We are going to talk about the Milwaukee Brewers Stadium. It was needs a lot of renovations done, and there was a poll done locally. And 56% of the Milwaukee County residents do not want a subsidy added to their tax to help pay for the stadium. And there has been a lot of talk that the team may move if there isn't a subsidy, but the local residents feel like the state should kick in from the revenue they get from it as well. What say you, Eric?
I mean, here's where the issue begins. It's not owned by the Brewers. Many people think that Mark Antanasio owns the team, which that's not the case at all. It's owned by the stadium district, professional baseball district of southeastern Wisconsin. The problem is they had a 5-county tax, which had all the 5 counties where a tax would be applied to whatever they bought, and the money gained from that tax would pay for the renovations, and it was supposed to expire in 2010. So basically, from when the stadium was built in 2001, when the Brewers opened the ballpark, it was supposed to last until 2010, but they actually ended up ending it in 2020. And they also have voted not to they don't want to reinsert the tax again. But the problem is, without the tax, the stadium district doesn't have money for these renovations, so they have to go the route of ugly negotiations with the government, which we all know getting public money can be very, very complicated. No matter what kind of project you do, much less entertainment venues. And so, because of that, they're trying to the Brewers have spent over thousands of dollars to try and get this money, lobby the government to give them this money to do the ballpark. Now, I'm optimistic about it because in an interview that Mark Antanasio put in, he says they're in about the 6th inning, which, can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. It's a little tough to say, but the Brewers want to stay in Milwaukee because they ran into this when they were trying to build Fiserv Forum, when they were replacing the Bradley Center at the time where the Bucks played. Now that was a little more complicated because you're actually building a place. Building a place is way harder than renovating one. And I think ultimately the Brewers will stay because, just look, if the Brewers really want to know what it's like to devastate a city of Major League Baseball twice, they can go ask the people of Washington, D.C. when they lost the same baseball team twice to where now they are the Minnesota Twins and Texas Rangers, respectively.
Very good. Candy?
The Brewers, when they played in County Stadium, and before Millerpark was even a glimpse, they voted. The councilman voted. And I'll never forget that once the councilman voted yes, and it won by the narrowest of margins, that then they recalled the last one that voted, and they got him out of Congress because of his swing vote. But here's what I'm going to tell the people in Milwaukee. We once lost our team a long time ago. You have enjoyed Major League Baseball in that park. The one thing that Milwaukee did get it right was building that stadium with a retractable roof, because you are guaranteed a game. So people that live up in Wausau, La Crosse, hours away, they take bus loads and they come down and they're guaranteed a game. Where there's a lot of stadiums that they're not guaranteed games, so they don't necessarily go.
Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit's one of them.
It gets cold in Wisconsin. And
it can get very cold. And the other thing is it can get very hot. Because at times with the sun, if you're playing a day game and it's 90 degrees, it's hot. That's why Miami has
very humid.
No.
I've been burnt at that stadium before. It's awful.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are one of the surrounding Great Lakes states. So me being from Michigan, and I also used to live in Florida, which is also as a peninsula. You're surrounded by water. Wisconsin has, 10,868 lakes in it. So you got water all inland, plus one of the biggest ones, the Lake Michigan, sitting right next to Milwaukee. So it's a humidity hotbed when those temperatures get above 82 degrees. That's where it feels like you need scuba gear to walk outside, people. At least I do.
I hear you. But that was one of the smartest things they did. But that also came at a price. Because when you're repairing a stadium that has a retractable roof, it's going to cost you more money. You knew that going in. And all these fans in Milwaukee that don't want to pay for it, but yet you want to go to the games, you enjoy the revenue that is streaming in. I mean, let's face it, for a while there, they called it Wrigley North, I hate to say. But they did, because a lot of Wrigley fans, people from Chicago coming up and spending their money in Milwaukee, you want that revenue. At what cost? Does it really, 0.5% sales tax? Is it really that much?
Yeah, because like he said earlier, it was 5 counties that was included in that, because Wisconsin, they all benefit from the hotels that people stay in when they're visiting. It's not just Milwaukee. It's all the surrounding suburbs, all the surrounding towns, and the few surrounding counties right around. That being said, I think they need to keep it there. It's one of the older traditional sports towns for baseball, and we can't keep losing tradition.
I mean, granted, Milwaukee Stadium is not what Oakland Stadium has become. It's not that neglected. This has only become, it's not like it's so noticeably neglected that no one would want to dream to bring their kids to number one, it's in a bad area to begin with. And number two, it's such a, it's also, a place where it's just not fun to see a ball game. Part of that is due to Mount Davis, but the Brewers are a summertime staple in the state of Wisconsin. We're going to forget the Bucks for a minute, because that's only become recent years. For a while, the Bucks were just awful. But no matter what, though, winning or losing, and I think part of it too is since Bud Selig is no longer owns the team, that people enjoy going to Brewer games. Even the most casual fans will go. It's a good ballpark. They've added a lot to it. They just opened up a restaurant inside the stadium, which, to be truthful, it's a terrific restaurant. It's now a brewery. I know, Candy, it was an Applebee's at one point. Some good memories there.
It was a TGI Fridays.
All right, but yeah, then it was a restaurant to be named later. Now it's called the Barrel Yard, which they turned it into a brewery. Which I visited the brewery. It's a fantastic place to eat. It costs a lot of money though to watch a ball game there because it's such a great view. But but the Brewers are a summertime staple. I'm going to bring this up. William Donald Schaefer. He was the mayor of Baltimore when the Colts skipped town and went to Indianapolis, where they've been ever since. William Donald Schaefer never got over the fact that he was the guy who was in charge when the Colts skipped town. When a team skips town, that ultimately cements your legacy as a politician. No matter what else you do, you can do some pretty amazing things for a state. You can get a lot done, but the fact that you lose a sports team, a professional sports team, that cements your legacy.
Let's also not forget, back in 2007, Miller Park hosted the Cleveland Indians game because they had such bad weather at their ballpark to start the season. They didn't want them so far behind that they actually hosted a couple of games in Miller Park.
Was that the year that all the sewers backed up there in Cleveland, and it actually was a flooded field and it was incapable of being played on?
I believe so.
I think it
back in
was.
And
It
we drew what they drew like 19,000 fans for a game, Cleveland Indians game Tuesday against the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Exceeded what they really thought, and it was the first of a 3-game series. So Milwaukee, you have a gem there. You have a place where other teams can play and have used the stadium. Keep it.
Yep, I was going to say the Cubs they had the Houston Astros because of Hurricane Rita at the time. I believe that was the hurricane. It was the game where Carlos Zambrano threw a no-hitter. They hosted it up there because Hurricane Rita had what they didn't, granted, which hindsight, it wasn't terrible like Katrina or anything, but still, a hurricane's a hurricane, and hurricanes can be very, very nasty. So that's why they moved it all the way up there. And the fact that you have a ballpark that people can retreat to in such terrible conditions if they can't play a home game, you're drawing tourist. No, this is more than just baseball. You're bringing in tourism money. You're bringing in extra concession money, because that's the concession money goes back to the team. You're bringing in people. Oh, we're visiting a ballpark. I gotta get a souvenir. There's that main area in the main concourse area near behind home plate where they got that giant gift shop. That people are going to go in there. This is a money-making opportunity for not just the ball team, but the community as a whole. Milwaukee has some great restaurants. People get hungry, and you got to eat in this world in order to survive. It's a great opportunity for the city. It's also a great opportunity for, I'm in Wisconsin. I might as well see what else is out there. It's great to bring in those kind of touristy towns that Wisconsin has, where people kind of go up there during the summertime when winter isn't as harsh. You're missing out on a place to bring in a significant amount of revenue, not just the Milwaukee Brewers, but the state as a whole.
Right.
And what about all the employees that's their job? That's their job in the summer. That's their income.
And on an average, between the concessions, the ticket holders, the security, and everything else, isn't it about 15,000 employees per stadium?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Plus security guards, and also
I included security in that number because I heard it was like 10,000 that actually work in the stadium, and anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 in security overall, because they don't give everybody a game every day.
And don't forget Wisconsin's tailgate country too, where before baseball games, that parking lot is lined with grills and RVs and also all this other stuff. So people, if you want a different kind of experience at a baseball game, I guarantee you won't find it at Wrigley Field.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. So let's talk about the Brewers some more, though. It looks like they're winning. Are they winning the division, or at least making the playoffs?
Well, they're for sure going to make the playoffs.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, for sure they're going to. I mean, at this point, I think their magic number to get in. I know to clinch the division 15 I think it's a little less for. I think they
only need 5 games to get in the playoffs, right? Or to secure their spot.
I think so, but either way, I still think they're going to get in. The National League the National League itself is not that strong. But I think ultimately they're going to win the division. They're right now beating the Marlins 6-0, and I think part of it too is they have the pitching. I mean, it's back to what it was. I mean, Corbin Burns hasn't been Corbin Burns of the past 2 seasons, but still, he's having an average year by his terms, but still, he had a no hitter going in 8 innings, where the Brewers unfortunately lost heartbreakingly to the Yankees. But Brandon Woodruff, after being out for so long, is finally being the Brandon Woodruff that the guy who's an all-star when healthy. And then Freddie Peralta somehow has found his command of the strike zone again, and has been absolutely terrific. I think he was named the Player of the Month for August. And Wade Miley, who as a lot of people recall was a folk hero in 2018. He's still, he's not like dominant, but he's still getting the job done. But the Brewers themselves, though, since getting Mark Canha and Carlos Santana, that offense has shown that it can put up runs. It's been a sore spot the past 3 years for the Brewers, but still they found a way to have those big innings and put the game out of reach. And Devin Williams is one of the best closers in the National League, and he was an all-star once again this year. And so, like, I really think they're going to win the division. I don't think the Cubs have enough pitching to win the division. They have the bats, obviously, because we've seen them do some amazing things over there, especially with the resurgence of Cody Bellinger. But I think just the Brewers pitching is going to ultimately get them over the hump. I think, though, now that they have this team itself, I mean, if you compare it to the 2021 team, you know, they're both good in their own ways. The 21 team was more, they got the right hit at the right time. And obviously the pitching was the pitching, which was really, really good that year when they had all three of their starters, Burns, Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta, go to the All-Star game. But this year, though, combined with the bats that are actually putting across a lot of runs, I think this team is a lot better than that team, which ultimately I really think they're going to win the NL Central.
Fantastic.
I think it's going to come down to the last series of the year. And who do they play? None other than the Cubbies, but they're playing at home, which helps. They have 2 series at home to end the year. It's the Cardinals and then the Cubbies. So I think right now we're up 2 games on the Cubbies. That's not a huge margin. At least I don't think so.
That makes that last series a swing series. Exactly. And everybody says, what do you mean by that? I sit there and said, if the other teams win 2 games, then it comes down to that coin flip on who gets in. If you win the 2 games, that means even if they win one, they can't catch you. That's the nuts and bolts of it.
I mean, I've been to a Cubs Brewers game at American Family Field. Even if it's just the regular season in June before the All-Star break, those series are intense. Let's be honest. Both Wisconsin and Illinois, they don't like each other. We never have, and probably never will. Actually, Wisconsinites like to make fun of Illinois more than anything else. And while, Illinois makes fun of Indiana, well, Wisconsin makes fun of Illinois. But the thing about it too is, it's the I-94 rivalry. An hour and a half separates the cities of Chicago and Milwaukee. So you're getting people from out of town going up there, and that place is packed. That series is intense. I was at a game in extra innings. I've never seen a regular season game that could be as intense if you unless you compare maybe what it was between the Yankees and the Red Sox during the 2000s. But right now, both teams are relevant. It couldn't be better for baseball. I'd argue saying the Brewers and the Cardinals rivalry is much bigger than the Cubs and Cardinals rivalry.
The only reason why the Cubs and Cardinals rivalry is because of the closeness of the 2 teams. That's what makes it a little more intense. It's more between the fans than it is between the teams. But as far as talent level, it's St. Louis and Brewers that is the better rivalry for how they play each other.
I mean,
I think part of the rivalry between St. Louis and the Cubs goes is that it's been National League all the time. The Brewers used to be in the American League, and so we had a rivalry against the White Sox for a while. Then when we switched to the National League, our rivalry became with the Cubs. So it's not as deep in history as like the Packers with the Bears rivalry is the oldest one in the NFL. Yeah. So that's partly why it's not quite as big of a rivalry.
Facts. And then the other thing we have to talk about tonight is Craig Counsell. This is the last year of his contract as the manager or coach of the Milwaukee Brewers. And before we get into that, I just want to say he is the 3rd longest tenured coach in all of Major League Baseball and the longest tenured coach in the National League. And I think but he also has a young family. Mm-hmm. He's not that old age-wise. He's my age. He's going to be 50. He's 53, the age I turn in next month. So that being said, I understand him wanting to be with the young family, with the new children and grandchildren and everything else. But at the same time, I think if you guys made the right offer and it wasn't a super long-term deal, you guys could keep him for a couple more years because he's kept Milwaukee relevant while he's been there.
I think, Craig is, Craig Counsell has two boys about to play, one of them's already playing college baseball, and then he's got another one about to do the same thing as well. One of them goes to Michigan, and the other one goes to Minnesota. So clearly the baseball genes are there, because Craig wasn't a bad player either. And Mark Attanasio is, he's willing to do anything to keep him there. He's been the best. He's arguably the best manager the Brewers have ever had. You can compare him to a lot of managers there, but Craig's probably the best one because his teams are consistent. He's a big reason why that team went to the playoffs 4 of the past 5 seasons, and at one point was made it all the way to Game 7 against the Los Angeles Dodgers. But Craig, he's done a lot with very little, given the Brewers' payroll. The guy can just take line up a team, and have them playing solid baseball. And it's funny because Craig, you wouldn't know if you're winning or losing, because Craig will just be standing there with the same blank expression. Like, even if his team gets the lead and the crowd's going crazy like it should be, he's just going to stand there saying, looking like they still have their at bats to go. That's just how he is. But Craig's been an unbelievable manager. Originally, he didn't want to be a manager because he came into the front office, because I think ultimately his goal is to eventually be a general manager, which I strongly believe he'd be a very good general manager. But part of it is his daughters are about to enter high school. His sons are playing college baseball, so I'm sure he wants to catch a few of their games. And I know Mark Attanasio and the Brewers badly want him back, but in case that doesn't happen, I don't see Craig managing anywhere else. He's from Wisconsin. He still lives here. Actually, he lives over just outside the city in Whitefish Bay. And, in case the Brewers, in case he decides to take a year off, which I can very well see him doing, I personally see him going to his bench coach, Pat Murphy, who's been Craig's number 2 guy, because Pat Murphy was originally Craig's college baseball coach at Notre Dame. And, Pat Murphy's capable. I think he's qualified. He's actually managed in Craig's place whenever Craig's had to take a game off because of family functions, which the Brewers have allowed him to do that. So pretty much, you could argue saying the Brewers, it's Craig's world, and the Brewers just live in it. But I think ultimately, though, Craig, I don't see Craig like taking another job, because I think he's very content in Wisconsin because he's got family here, and his kids have grown up here. So, but even if he does take the year, I think I can see him taking a year off just because of the family aspect, not to be wooed by another job. But it's going to take a lot of convincing for Craig to kind of let all that go, to return to the dugout for another couple seasons.
All right.
I think it'll be very interesting because, like you said, Eric, he is a Wisconsin born and bred. He played high school for Whitefish Bay. He played for the Brewers. He played for the Marlins.
2 World
He's
Series.
always loved Wisconsin. That's where his kids grew up. That's where he lives. That's where he calls home. But he also he's a player's coach. Let's face it. They've talked about this numerous times, how the whole team rallies around themselves. It's a very unselfish team. And that his locker room is very much upbeat. And Milwaukee, it would be sad when he goes. Would I understand if he steps away for family? I understand that. It would be sad. I really don't see him going anyplace else. I don't think yes, money is important, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that's the whole crux of what's driving this. I think it is he wants to see his sons play. He wants, more time with his daughter too. But he has done so much with so little. There aren't the big stars. Yes, we have Christian Yelich, and we got Christian Yelich. But before Christian Yelich, who did we have? We didn't have any big names. We didn't have any big stars. We don't have the Aaron Judges. We don't have that kind of a payroll that we can get all those players.
Ryan Braun.
Yeah, but he's
Corey
I-
Hart.
There was a
Weeks?
couple. There was a
there was
couple.
a couple, but not like your.
I'm just
you
going,
know,
wait a minute. Ryan Braun was a
Prince
superstar.
Fielder. He hit a lot of home runs.
And he hit a
And-
lot more when he came to Detroit.
Prince went to
Yeah.
Detroit. Ryan had some extra little help that he got in trouble for. And let's face it, there aren't many teams that at that time would have kept him on their payroll
Right.
and kept him. Milwaukee still embraced him and said, okay, we'll forgive you, but he was never quite the same though either.
No, but
Craig knows how to manage all of them.
Craig kept that team. Craig kept that team focused that year when all that broke out. I think he still got them to the playoffs as well. But Craig knows how to keep that team focused amidst all the turmoil that's going on around him. He knows how to keep that team focused. And I mean, yeah, last year was off. I mean, that was beyond Craig. That was, they foolishly traded Josh Hader, despite which when you trade a closer, anybody's going to that's going to deflate a team no matter what. I mean, you trade the guy who, I mean, unless you're the Seattle Mariners somehow, but even then they've been a little off as of late, which I think they're starting to feel the effects of that. But which that was beyond Craig. You can only do so much there, which people were rumored saying, "Oh, is Craig going to leave?" And my answer would be, why would they? If you can find a guy who's been able to do that job, which arguably one of the harder jobs in baseball, given the market, and also the way he's doing it, I challenge you to find a guy who would be able to do it. And also, Craig also has that championship pedigree. He won 2 World Series rings, one of them with the Marlins, and he's famous for that sac fly, which I think has become now iconic, which is because it was described as the most important sac fly in World Series history. And then also he won one with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And even so, Craig's still very prominent with the Brewers. Even if he did leave, fans wouldn't blame him. He's not leaving because of money. It has everything to do with the fact. It has everything to do with his family. I'd be very shocked if Craig Counsell entered the market and decided to go somewhere else. I know I wrote about this a while back, saying with Craig, if Craig were to surprisingly be available, many teams would find themselves in the situation that the Cubs found themselves in when Joe Madden was surprisingly available when he used his opt-out out of his Tampa Bay Rays contract and eventually went on to manage the Cubs and help break the curse.
I agree.
But Craig's got 2 homes. He's got a home here. He'll always be Wisconsin. The guy, it can be argued though that team is everything that the state's about.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Candy, before we get into the Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears recap, do you want to go over our little advertising slogan that you do?
Oh, sure. I would love to. So if you like listening to podcasts, you can find the audio version on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit that red subscribe button in the lower corner underneath Jeremy next to Eric. It says subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like our shows, share them. Tell everybody about them. Get everybody to share them. I know we have all kinds of other shows. If you like baseball, you can see 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. If you like football, it's Inside the Pigskin. If you like Fire Up, we talk about all kinds of different sports there. Scott had a show earlier, No Limits, talking about Parkinson's disease, and it has a former LA Rams cheerleader on it. We have Melfar Jr., who used to play for the NFL. Pundit, you come on over to our South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Check out all of our shows. Subscribe, like, share. We also have a website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Mr. Jeremy writes typically about the Detroit Lions. Yes, I know.
And the NFL.
But he writes, Scott writes. We have all kinds of people that are writing for us. We have different media outlets that send us content. I take pictures. Come on over, check out the website. If you have any show ideas, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Jeremy, I think that's it for now. We'll do it again at the end.
And let's not forget, Scott has a new book he's writing called Adjusting to New Media that should be released soon. And he's also now the president of media operations for Egla Corp.
Correct. Thank you for catching me up.
Yeah, no problem. And don't forget, if you want to advertise cost efficiently with the South Florida Tribune, call Scott at 954-304. I missed it.
954-304-4941.
Yes, that's it.
We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. We're over 900. Let's get to 1,000 people. Help us.
Please. That being said, well, there was a big game Sunday afternoon as the Green Bay Packers went to Chicago, Illinois to face the Bears in Lambeau Soldier Field.
Careful.
Right now, the Packers still have ownership of that field. I don't care what they say. That's their home away from home because they win more there than any other team in the North. That being said, let's go over a few of the stats before I get to Candy's take on it. Jordan Love, he did pretty good. He was 15 of 27 for 245 yards, 3 touchdowns with no interceptions. Justin Fields didn't have as bad of a day passing, but the in-air yards they flew does not match the yards they got. That's all I have to say, because he was 24 of 37, 216 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick that went to one Quay Walker, who took it to the house from 37 yards out. So, and I hope he does well. I hope he passes concussion protocol and can play for you this weekend, because I think you'll need him to help stop that run game in Atlanta coming up this weekend. But that being said, Jordan Love looked very good to above average, not great. I mean, yes, he had a passer rating of 124.4, but we know that's not the greatest measure of quarterbacks. They have many other measures out there, but he did a good job. Aaron Jones led the team in rushing. I think I said that he had 41 yards and a tutty.
Let's hope he's okay.
Yeah, let's hope he's okay, because he got hurt too, didn't he, towards the end of the game?
He was running it into the end zone, and then he was just, once he got into the end zone, he was favoring that hamstring of his. But
left leg, right?
Yeah. Well, part of it is though is Soldier Field turf is an absolute dump.
Well, that's why they want to move the team to Arlington Heights, anyways. But that's another story.
Mm-hmm.
But because they're tired of it being Lambeau South. But anyway.
They've been trying to leave for years.
But, Justin Fields didn't have a horrible game passing, but he hasn't proved he can read and throw downfield yet. So for anybody in Chicagoland that's watching us, I'm sorry, but I think that MVP season you want is still loading, and it's stuck in a loading cycle, just like when YouTube goes bad, it's sitting there at that little circle of death. But anyways,
the little dots. Don't forget the dots.
But what really killed them, I think, was more defense, because Chicago did dominate the time of possession. They did move the ball well. They had it. They gained more, almost as many yards as what the Packers did overall. I mean, they had 311 yards. They had 189 through the air and 122 on the ground. Now, I do like the fact that they take away the stats from the passing yards now, which is something I've been lobbying for years, because I hated that it took away from the rushing stats. Because it's a passing play when a sack happens.
Yeah.
So, like I said, 189 passing yards, 122 rushing yards, 4.4 yards per play. They had 22 first downs, but they were only 3 of 13. And that's the biggest thing. 3 of 13 on third down efficiency. You can't win when you're doing that. And they lost the turnover battle with a fumble. And Lord forbid, I feel sorry for Justin Fields. He has had a trash O-line his entire time he's been there that can't help the run get going enough for everybody. So they're good at holding the pocket, but he's not good at reading a defense. So that's not a good combination. I want to give all the kudos where I can, when I can, because I like playing the devil's advocate here.
Well,
but I still think defensively, those overpaid linebackers they were They looked like they took coverage school from Eli Apple. They were burnt toast.
I think
Go ahead, Eric.
I think part of the issue, besides, there was a lot of busted coverage there, so they had Jordan Love had a lot of wide open throws there. Actually, it could have been worse had he not overthrown some guys or come up short with some guys. It could have very well been worse because there were a few plays there where he had some walk-in touchdowns there with his receivers and tight ends, but he was unable to get there. I think part of that's just inexperience of being a first-year starter.
Right. And it showed, and I'm going to add to that right there because you're talking about Jordan Love in specific. His first half was nowhere near as good as his second half. Once he settled in and got his feet in set and was starting to look better, he started to be able to read that defense. He was doing the right reads, but he was getting the yips and sailing passes, which in all actuality, that's the best thing a quarterback could do because you don't want to throw it short because then they get picked off. If they're sailing it over their heads 9 times out of 10, you're fine. Unless you have that one safety in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah, Seahawks, I'm talking about safety. Glover Quinn, or Quandre Diggs. But anyways,
he was actually a pretty good safety for Detroit.
Yeah, Glover Quinn was great. Quandre Diggs was okay, but at the same time, we didn't really lose any interceptions when he left the team.
No, not really. I think part of it too is with the Bears is, besides the busted coverage though, I'm not ready to get on the Jordan Love bandwagon yet because the offense just had everything working for him that game. You're against a rebuilding Chicago Bears team, and I'm not ready to. People are saying, oh, they could make some noise, which I'm not going to rule it out. The NFC North is pretty weak this year, so they very well, if things get figured out, they very well could be in it. But just based on the division, not based on the roster that they have.
In our division, we have 2 bad teams right now.
Yeah.
And you can say what you want, and I'm going to lay it out.
The Vikings are overrated.
The Vikings defense looks so bad. They got beat by Baker Mayfield and the Bucs.
That says a lot.
I mean, the Bucs with Tom Brady could only win 7 games last year, and they didn't win their first one to week 5, and they won week 1 this year. Think about that for a minute. That's crazy.
I think part of it too is I think part of the issue too with the Packers is I want to see what Jordan Love does when he has to win the game by himself. Like let's just say hypothetically the run game is just not working. Which there's going to be games where that run game is not happening. They're going to have games where AJ Dillon's not going anywhere. Aaron Jones, well, depending on the seriousness of his injury, could be out. So I want to see what Jordan Love has to do with so little time, which granted he did a lot without Christian Watson. I will give him that though, because Watson was out and all he really had was Rasheed Dobbs to throw to in the receiver category. I mean, he had
Dobbs.
Yeah, he had Romeo Dobbs. Sorry, I was thinking of Rasul Douglas, the corner.
Right,
but
the corner that moved to safety this game, who actually didn't have that bad of a game. What was it I was going to say? As far as PFF is concerned, if you looked on that roster, there was 5 players below 50 on the Bears. You guys only had 2 players below 50 the entire game. So that says a lot about the depth of your defense and your offense versus what they have as a rebuilding team.
I think, part of it too is, but yeah, I am curious to see how he responds when the going gets tough, because it's sometimes really bad for a quarterback to start out on a high, because eventually when the roller coaster goes downhill, and this is a roller coaster league where you're going to have highs and lows. That's just the way the NFL is built. There's going to be highs and lows. I want to see how he responds to those lows and if he can get out of it, because I've seen quarterbacks have a 2-3 game stretch where they are absolutely ecstatic, and we're already hailing them as the next Dan Marino or Joe Montana. But when they go low, there is a chance where they just never get out. We've seen that countless times.
Oof. That's all I got to say. Candy?
Now, let's give him a little bit of credit, because first of all, he's stepping in the shoes of arguably a Hall of Fame quarterback who has had the Bears number for years. And we've heard that all off season. And the Bears fans and the Bears players have said, oh, great. Aaron is out of Green Bay. We'll have that team now will be able to beat the Packers. So going in, Jordan had all kinds of pressure. In my opinion, first of all, you're going into Soldier Field, which is a cold, windy, and it wasn't cold, but it's a very windy place to play. It's unfriendly. And here you're talking about filling Aaron Rodgers' shoes, and everybody kept talking about it. Everybody's talked about it. You know, how's he going to do? How's he going to do? He has arguably one of the youngest receiving cores out of most any of the NFL teams. Granted, now he has got an experienced O-line. That is going to make a difference. If our O-line can stay healthy, I think Jordan will be okay. Is he going to be the caliber of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers? That remains to be seen. But I think you also have to give him credit, because I think so many people, yes, everyone's not going to jump on the bandwagon. And I'm not saying I'm jumping on the bandwagon, but for the most part, he played a good game.
Right.
Yeah. He overthrew some of his young receivers. But my question to you is it more on his running, or was it on the receivers running routes and their timing as well?
No, I gave him credit. You didn't hear my whole statement, because I said he had some errant throws and some bad decision making to start the game, but he played a good game overall. I did give him credit. So, but until he plays
a better opponent, I get it.
Yeah, a quality starting defense. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, last year the Bears were 31st in the league for a reason.
And I did too. You know, I at the end of the day, though, this is professional football, and these guys are clearly there for a reason. I know the number of the Bears linebackers that they signed this past offseason were Pro Bowlers at one point or another, and we're on those All Pro lists. So I'm not gonna take away, because at the end of the day, he has to go out and execute. We just need a little more. We just need a little more proof. There has to be a little more than just a 1 week sample size.
Oh yeah, I agree. And it also will help when he gets his number one receiver, because not having your number one receiver that you've practiced with for a while now. Let's face it, he sat behind Aaron for 3 years, so it's not like he hasn't taken any snaps with any of them. But he wasn't taking the first round snaps with all of them.
He did take the first round snaps with all of them last year, because Aaron Rodgers refused to show up at camp. So don't give me that candy.
And don't forget, he appeared.
How many of our wide receivers went? How many of our receivers and how many of our players? Remember, the Jets are the Packers East.
I know the Jets are the Packers East, and they're playing like the Chicago South right now.
And ironically enough, Aaron Rodgers is hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wish injury on the guy.
No.
But you know, it's just a little bit of has to come into Packers fans right now. Just a little
I wouldn't go that
a little
far.
not because they wished injury, just because we trade him away and he gets hurt the first game.
After only a couple plays, too.
Yeah, I know.
No, because we want him to play a lot, because honestly, we want that better draft pick.
Right, because the secondary pick for next year's draft is contingent on how many games played.
Correct.
Which now they're feeling he has an Achilles injury, and that's bad news.
Yeah, that's bad news. He may not play another game of the year if it's an Achilles rupture.
Looks like that draft pick, that draft pick could drop. And it's a nice class too.
And it's a third round pick if he plays, and it's a sixth if he doesn't. Correct.
I believe so. But yeah,
it's still a good draft class. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, draft picks are still draft picks. You got a chance to find these guys who can make noise.
Right. Exactly. You could be like San Francisco and Purdy and Mr. Irrelevant, and look where he is now. So you can be the Packers and we draft Tony Mandrich, and look what happened with that. So you have to hit on the draft pick, so it doesn't matter necessarily where you are. Yes, typically you hit more when you're up the higher rounds, but
I mean Brock Purdy's looking like a young Brady right now.
Oh, stop. I don't.
I am on the Purdy train right now. He got that team to the NFC Championship game.
I know he
year.
did, and then he got hurt, and then he fell off. What did Brady never do in the playoffs? Get hurt and miss games. So until he can make it all the way through to the Super Bowl, you can't compare him to Brady.
Yeah, well, I'm
gonna compare him more to Aaron Rodgers. Get to the NFC Championship and lose.
That's why I call him the Green Bay Chokers.
Come on, I gave you a good comparison. Stop.
Okay, Mr. Other Team over there.
Well, and I'm not even going to talk about my team. I love the football. Mm-hmm. I love football, and we will face each other week 4.
Week 4. Mm-hmm.
I'm high on it. I really am.
I think it should be a good game. It's going to be in Lambeau, which has historically been bad for the Lions record-wise.
Right.
But maybe through these last 2 times we've been in Lambeau and smacked you guys around, maybe we got a shot.
Well, yeah, I mean, I am curious. I think I am curious to see how the rest of the season goes for Jordan Love. I mean, obviously he had a great opener for getting in the game for like week 1, which obviously it couldn't have gone better. Right. aside from
you guys won by 10 points, and they had to come back to make it a 10-point game because at one point it was a 20-point game.
Right, that was in garbage time. But yeah, I think aside from Salem balls, though, that's a good problem to have with a quarterback, though, because that can easily be fixed.
Right. Sailing, once he settled in, he didn't sail them anymore.
Right.
That's what I'm getting at. Once he settled in and started playing to his strengths.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But it really stinks. If Aaron Jones goes down, I don't think A.J. Dillon's as good of a back as Aaron Jones overall. He's a great running back, but he's not as good receiving out of the backfield. He's also not as good pass pro.
He's not a guy you can stick in and say, be the full-time guy, because he's not that kind of back who can go in there. And because these days in the NFL, you need 2 backs. You need a back with speed, and then you also need a power back. That's just the way the NFL has become nowadays. It used to be back in the day where you could have 1 back and be fine, say a John Riggins, Walter Payton, you name it. But nowadays you need 2 backs because, I think that's you need 2 backs because, those guys are getting hit around every other play, and they're getting jarred around every other play.
You know why we'll never see the 2,000-yard rushing seasons anymore and 1 back doing everything? Not only is it a passing game, they play more games. So it's harder on the running backs. That's why they went to running back by committee. It's to save them the wear and tear so they can at least get those 3 to 6 years out of a guy. It's about longevity.
Right.
And the average length of time for a running back to play in this league is 3 years due to the beatings they take. Because other than the quarterback on offense, they're on the field pretty much just as much.
Right. And also
it's them and the O-line. Everybody else kind of swaps out way more often.
I mean, running backs, that's as close to old-time football as you're getting. There is no protection for those guys. Quarterbacks are protected nowadays, especially because you can't grab them at the legs. You can't deck them like you used to be able to. But running backs, it is feast or famine out there, and there are times where that defensive lineman is going to put them on the backside.
Yep. I mean, should the running backs be paid more? More than likely, because of the jobs they're asked to do these days. And I think the ones that should be paid more are not the pure running backs. It's the do-everything backs like Christian McCaffrey, which is why he's paid as the highest paid running back in the league right now. If you're able to catch, pass pro, and run and line you up anywhere on the field, those are the guys that deserve the big money.
I mean,
in my opinion.
Nowadays, you have to be a pass catching back because it's a passing league. The game is kind of designed to throw the ball now.
The game is designed to throw the ball, but the to win a game, it still takes time of possession. You still got to be able to run time off the clock. If you have an incomplete pass, the clock stops. So therefore, you're better off with a run game still in the long run.
Right, because ultimately you got to bleed the clock.
Right. That's exactly what I'm getting at. Any team that gets a big lead, what do they start to do? They start to run the ball more. It's exactly what Green Bay did. They threw the ball less in the second half and they ran the ball more.
Yeah, and that's what teams do nowadays. I feel like the running back now is kind of like it's kind of more toward this route, but I think they're trying to make the running back kind of like what the closer is in baseball. Have them have that one situation where they can get the job done and go out and do it. Like get that first down to eventually knee the ball, boom, game over, we win.
And I still think Chicago made a mistake letting David Montgomery go because he's that between the tackles, move the chains, and keep the clock running back they had. Roschon Johnson is a nice addition, but he's a rookie and unproven.
He's at this point right now, I do agree with that because, David Montgomery was perfect for that team. But I think Roschon Johnson, and my concern is he's just going to be another Tariq Cohen.
No, he's way bigger than Tariq Cohen, and he has bulk to him. He's more of that's why the run and shoot offense was a disaster. Absolutely. I mean the run and shoot and that modified West Coast where they never ran the ball, and it was always okay, we'll run it on first down, play action second down, and then throw it long on third down. That was the offense of the weird West Coast before Bill Walsh fixed it.
Ultimately, though, you can't just have be a one-dimension offense. Even if you're like because we saw with Cliff Kingsbury, who was mainly a air raid guy coming out of Texas Tech. We saw that didn't work in the NFL.
It didn't work in college either.
Yeah.
One thing you can say about Cliff Kingsbury, and I'm going to beat this into the ground. He would start out the first 6 games of any season with a great record, winning 80%, but only winning 10% of the second half of the season.
He was a great guy to develop quarterbacks, but ultimately not a great game coach. And
Scott Morganrod, don't I know? I lived it.
Buddy Ryan once called the run and shoot offense the chuck and duck. And Buddy Ryan's right to that extent.
I'm also going to give a little kudos to Matt LaFleur because let's face it, he's coached Aaron Rodgers for how many years, and we haven't quite figured out how good of a coach he is. I think he still has a ways to go, but I give him kudos for making the changes at halftime that we needed to make to win that game and to look better.
I think
so. I'm going to give him kudos.
Yep. LaFleur, he showed. It wasn't a good run for the year he was in Tennessee, but he ultimately was Jared Goff's QB coach when he got Jared Goff and the Rams into the Super Bowl the first time around. So he clearly was good at. Green Bay clearly saw something there.
Right. I know, but I'm just saying because for so long we've known Aaron. Let's face it, he was a coach of Aaron, but Aaron coached a lot of that team and did his own play calling and changed things at the line of scrimmage. And so you really have to give him a little bit of kudos because he's brought Jordan along and he knew what changes to make at halftime. And not all coaches do that. And I've seen a lot of it. I've seen a lot of them that don't. So this time I'm going to say kudos for that.
I think also with that too. There was a little less of changing at the line of scrimmage with Aaron Rodgers when LaFleur got there. Obviously, he did a lot more of that with Mike McCarthy, but there was a little bit less, not a lot, but a little bit.
The last 2 years, Aaron Rodgers audibled more than he ever did in any year that McCarthy coached.
Really? Wow.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I know that for a fact because you can hear him come up to the line every broadcast that I watched of Packers games. Kill, kill, kill. That's kill the play. That's audible. Immediately. Mm-hmm. That before he even gave a cadence, kill, 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 call out a play, and then blue 42.
Still he helped them. He got Green Bay into on the doorstep of going to a Super Bowl.
So, he'd get to the doorstep. The problem is he always ran into the team he grew up loving as a kid, the San Francisco 49ers, and he just couldn't find it in his heart to beat them.
Right, that one, yeah. Well, part of it too was well, that's because that wasn't totally on LaFleur. That was LaFleur just keeps on hiring the wrong coordinators or keeping the wrong coordinator when the Niners are a running football team and Green Bay couldn't stop the run all year, and they just what were they going to do? Just pound them with it. And we saw just how bad their running defense was when Raheem Mostert of all people went off.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that pretty much covers everything we wanted to talk about. What do you guys got a parting shot you want to give, Eric?
I think I think it was a great opener for Jordan Love. I think he's off to a fantastic start, but got to show me more, buddy, in order for me to jump on the bandwagon.
Candy?
My parting shot is going to be kudos to Wisconsin women's volleyball. They are undefeated 7-0 and ranked number 1 in the country. Kudos to them and good luck for having a good season.
Amen. Well, kudos to the Packers for remaining the owners of the Chicago Bears and the owners of Lambeau South, also known as Soldiers Field. Kudos also, there was another game played Thursday night. I don't know, this team that wears a similar color to what I'm wearing that had a pretty good game against the Super Bowl champs.
Yep.
But kudos to them. I would really like it if you guys could keep Craigcounsell, but I understand if you can't, because family comes first. Family is the only thing that comes between jobs other than bad bosses.
Yeah.
I agree.
That being said, I want to take this out the same way I do every show I do. Try every day to be a better person you were the day before. It's the only way to make the world a better place. It starts within here. Thank you for watching Fire Up Wisconsin tonight, everybody. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Candy.
Jeremy, do you want to tell people how they can get a hold of you?
Well, sure. Why not? You can see right there, there's my Twitter handle at SmokingJeremyB. You can also find me right here on the South Florida Tribune, whether it's writing on the website at southfloridatribune.com under the Motor City Tribune heading, or on any one of these podcasts, Fire Up Wisconsin, Fire Up, the Professor and the Pupil, or wherever Scott may need me. I'm there. Then there's my channel, which is Kneecap Biting with the Detroit Lions. I do shows very periodically throughout the week anymore because I never know when I'm going to do a show anymore because there's too much news. And then anywhere Sideline Sports may need me, maybe even in the press box at Lions home games this year. Yes.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for a confirmation email.
You'll get in.
But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Eric, tell everybody how to get a hold of you.
You can follow me on my Twitter at Sports Team News or my blog, bellyupsports.com, where I cover all things baseball.
Candy?
You can find me typically Tuesday nights, 3 Chicks in a Pod or Chicks and Salsa, depends on how many chicks we have doing our show. You can find me, you never know when Scott needs me. Here, Fire Up Wisconsin is going to be on Monday nights. Inside the Pigskin, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk is normally Tuesday nights. Sports Exchange is Wednesdays. Thursdays is Pundit's Pundit. There is Professor and the Pupil on Sundays. No Limits will show up. It was on tonight. You just never know. Scott is writing a book, adjusting to new school versus old school media. If you like this show and any of our other shows, please make sure you subscribe. Tell all your friends, have them subscribe, watch, comment. We love to have comments. We love it to have ideas. If you have any ideas, you can email us, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. I know, it's kind of unusual. South Florida Tribune, and we're talking about Packers, Wisconsin, Detroit. Well, both of us are from the Midwest, but we live down here. We're transplants like everybody else down here. So
Snowbirds.
Well, yeah, because we live down here all the time.
Right. No, but I mean, that's how it started out.
Yes.
That's how it always starts out. You move down there as a snowbird, then you say, I don't want to go back.
Yes. So catch any of our broadcasts. If you like podcasts, go to iHeartRadio, catch any of our podcasts, South Florida Tribune. We love having you, and we look forward to having you and seeing you next time on the South Florida Tribune. This is Fire Up Wisconsin for Jeremy Ballrick, Eric Katz, and Candy as myself. Everybody have a great evening, and go Pack, go Brewers, and on Wisconsin.